Hello, Mark. It's been a while.
Yes,
Good 8
good
months.
morning. Yeah, actually, no, we did speak. I think we spoke in
Briefly.
May. In
Yeah.
May, when Stephen was on one of his little
Correct.
typewriting missions.
Yep.
Yes, but it's been a while anyway, and it's nice to see you and good to talk to you. It's
Yep.
also
I wish
good.
you.
It's also good to have something of substance to talk about as well. So, um,
Correct.
yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on her decision?
There are kind of layers of my thoughts about this. The first layer is that, given what she's written, and I'll come back to that in a moment,
Hmm.
there's no way in the world it should have taken a year for this matter to be determined by her, irrespective of her decision. So there's clearly a willful intent not to be concerned about the timely delivery of justice, right? So justice is not only the truth and the proper outcomes, but it's also to deliver it in a timely manner, because for every day that a incarcerated person is in prison and shouldn't be there is a day they never get back. So, unfortunately, in this case, the judge has a track record of not caring about that aspect of
Hmm.
her role. The So that's kind of that part of it. The other thing is, when I read through her determination, um, there are many things about what she had to say that totally ignored one of the primary issues that's being argued here, and that is, um, if this newly discovered evidence, the Sawinski issues, the Baresh issues, and so on, were available to a jury at the time of Stephen's trial, would have there been created reasonable doubt in the
Hmm.
minds of the jurors to determine an answer in a way other than what they did. And we already know a lot about how the jurors thought and behaved at the time.
Hmm.
But the Judge Sukovich here is totally, almost crazily focused on whether any of that absolutely proves that Bobby Dassey, uh, who is the subject of this, in part at least, the subject of this motion, um,
Hmm.
she's just focused on whether he could have committed the crime or whether there was evidence of committing the crime.
Yeah.
Now, irrespective of the merits of whether Bobby Dassey is responsible here or not, just forget that for a second, and he also deserves the presumption of innocence. The whole state case in Stephen's case was that the car never left the salvage yard. It stayed on there, it was hidden, and remained there until such time it was so-called discovered on Saturday, the 5th of November,
Hmm.
5 days after the alleged events. Um, but Angela Sukovich, Judge Sukovich, totally ignores the fact that this argument in the petition is about the fact that there are multiple sightings, including Sawinski and Baresh, that the car
Yeah.
was off the property.
You also have multiple sightings of the car off the property. And
Yes,
we also have a sighting from his own brother stating that he's seen him in a vehicle that was not his Blazer.
correct. But 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 Judge Sukovich doesn't want to consider the impact of those facts in terms of the primary issue of reasonable doubt. And this is
Hmm.
what it's about. No one's trying. I mean, you might say Kathleen Zellner has a very strong view about the involvement of Bob Dassey,
As
but
do I.
irrespective of that, this primary issue is about, had this evidence been available at the time, and there's issues about the phone calls that weren't
Well,
disclosed. Would have
well, it's
that changed the
obvious.
minds of the jurors?
Of course it was. Well, it wasn't even given to his legal team, so how would they even be able to try to go down that avenue?
Correct. And but uh, it's almost it's almost like Judge Sukovich is solely trying to argue against Stephen's petition on the basis that he and his lawyers haven't proved that it was Bobby Dassey. It's not their role to prove it was Bobby Dassey. It's their role to demonstrate evidence that would show there's sufficient doubt to warrant a hearing to examine the evidence. Because her principal role is to say, okay, there's newly discovered evidence here. Yes, it is. It's new evidence. Should it be examined to test its veracity? In other words, to test its credibility? The answer is yes. But there is no way in the world that she wants to have any sort of hearing in a court. And so she goes down with due respect to her, she goes down this path of failing the petition on the basis that they haven't proved that Bobby Dassey was responsible for the death of Teresa Hallbach. Well, that's like two different pathways. The first pathway is to discover whether there is sufficient newly discovered evidence to warrant a hearing. That's her primary and, if you like, sole objective here, or should be. But she always seems to take it this step further to say, oh, and by the way, I don't believe such and such did it, and these are my reasons why. I mean, she's not meant to be the jury at this point in time.
Yeah, she's supposed to look at the facts presented to her and make a decision based on that, not what everybody's telling you to do.
Well, a decision to grant a hearing, not a decision to make a determination about the merits of that hearing. That's something for another day. Her first obligation is to say, is there sufficient, in the interest of justice, is there sufficient evidence here to warrant examination? And let's call a hearing to examine Mr. Sawinski's affidavit and Mr. Beresh's affidavit and anything else that's relevant to that. That's all she has to do, right? And, you know, just to kind of give you the colour of Justice Sukovich, the circumstances, I wish I was more positive about her, but I'm not, because she's demonstrated that she hasn't deserved that. You would know, I'm sure, and many others would know, that in the last month or two or so, there was, for a period of 3 or 4 weeks, in the Wisconsin Law Journal, a survey. Wisconsin Law Journal will be a professional online magazine principally for lawyers, even though the public can see it. There was a simple survey in there that said, do you believe Stephen Avery deserves a new trial, or something like that, pretty much like that. And it varied over time, because I kept monitoring it over a number of weeks, but basically it ended up concluding that over 80% of the respondents, which would principally be lawyers, one would expect, voted, yes, he deserves a new trial. So how can you have all these legal people having the view that Stephen Avery deserves a new trial, but a judge who's just another person, another lawyer who's sitting in a high office, won't even give him the consideration of the merits of the claim? It just shows you how strong that they, in her case, and I'm sure with others, are pushing back on any sense of justice for Stephen. So it's interesting how, I guess we always knew that Justice Sukovich would deal with this in this way. No one expected her to suddenly, change her colours and say, "Oh yeah, so I'll give Stephen a hearing," because she's never supported him ever, let alone way back when he had that wrongful death suit, that she wouldn't, even though the Hallbachs wanted it dismissed, she wouldn't dismiss it. And ultimately, she had to be forced by either the appeals court or the Supreme Court or someone to dismiss that matter.
Already uncovered the fact that they did purposely hide things, not only from Stephen's first trial and his appellate court, and her, because she fought for things that they said did not exist. And then what do you know? We have all the phone calls now, but not all of them, because they're still not releasing the audio for the 4th of November.
Yes. Well,
why?
Well, we know why. So they don't want there's calls there that go to Stephen's innocence, right? That's basically what it's about. So, and if they were truly officers of the court and, agents of justice, they would just release everything and let it be what it is.
Well, I recently got a new job, and I come in contact with way more people than I used to every day. And when I
Hmm.
get to sit down and talk to them, they just chit chatting and stuff. And I tend to bring up this case.
Yep.
And 99% of the people I talk to all believe Stephen is guilty. And it's all because of what they seen happen on the news.
Yeah, because they don't know the detail.
No.
They don't care to take the time, and that's fair enough. I mean, there's many cases going on in the world that I don't care to take the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the only proper answer, if you don't know the detail, is that I don't really know whether he's guilty or not. I know the jury found him guilty,
Mm-hmm.
but that's the reaction a lot of people give. And I think also, Millbilly, we have this issue where people don't want to believe that their officials are not behaving properly. It's just, I
Well,
mean, it's instinctive, isn't it? We all want to think that people do the right thing,
yeah.
but
They also trust the media to be truthful, which they are not ever.
no, they're just interested in news.
There's
Whatever
no,
makes,
there's not
whatever makes.
journalists anymore. They're all reporters,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, that's right. And all they're interested in is creating news, because news creates
Clicks and views, and you get ad revenue, and yeah, yeah.
correct. That's all it's about.
It's all about money.
Yeah, even when you read some of these stories or reports that arise, say for example, Stephen had some of these issues associated with him writing letters about the delay, and then the news will get a hold of that and report it, and they'll retrace the essence of the story of making a murderer. But
So
they give no analytical value as to why this is an issue. No one would say is the night is even though this is old hat now, is the 90 days a valid matter? Why would it be that the judge is taking so long? There's no deeper dive into whether Stephen's claim of delays is valid. They just
yeah.
report it, right?
Well,
That's
I
not
can only imagine what's going on behind the scenes. I mean, just from us getting all those emails that transpired between everybody when Kathleen Zellner first took his case,
yes,
and they're trying to debunk everything that she's uncovering.
yes.
I mean, there's just so much. You got the butt call. They're violating their own statutes. It's just they're not after justice.
They don't. Here's the bottom line. I mean, there's in this case with Stephen Avery, in particular with Manitowoc County and Calumet County, and the Attorney General's Department, they don't want him out of prison, right?
Nope.
And more than that, they don't want the truth of this matter revealed, because the truth of this matter is going to reveal a sorry mess of
Oh, I
behavior,
already.
right?
Well, it goes all the way from the Attorney General down.
Yeah,
I mean, Deb Strauss is sent in there before they even find the car.
yeah.
And she's the one that was on the lead investigation to why Stevie was convicted in the first place for a crime he didn't commit. They tried to whitewash that.
Yeah. I mean, the intent was always there right at the beginning. So this is just, chapters 10, 11, 12,
honestly,
15.
I hate to say it, but I think they're trying to delay it and delaying and delaying it as much as they can because they hope that he'll die.
Yeah, well, I mean, that I think that's probably part of the story. But that said, I'm sure, although I don't know, but my view would be that this matter, a wrongful conviction doesn't disappear just
No,
because the person passes
no,
away, right?
correct.
So the estate will continue the fight. So that's the other thing. So if they think it's going to go away by just being obstinate, it's not. And eventually you get people in positions that are prepared to do something because they're not tainted by the past.
Well, that for instance, like we FOIA'd for the dispatch calls from Manitowoc for 10 years, and even Kathleen Zellner FOIA'd for the same information, and they told her it doesn't exist. And then when they get the new sheriff and a new clerk of courts, somebody sends in a FOIA, and what do you know? Oh, now we have it.
Yeah, I mean that of itself should bring discipline against the organisation for failing to disclose information under a statutory FOIA request, right?
Mm-hmm.
They go, oh, we have it, right? really, there should be an independent analysis of every piece of data that they have. It shouldn't be up to the sheriff's department or their staff or the court or whatever it is. There's enough uncertainty about this that, particularly, for example, those Friday the 4th missing call logs and phone calls. So why would that be the case? Let's just go in and see why that is the case. Have they been deleted? Are they there? They haven't been disclosed. Let's just go and do that. Right? They're the sorts of things. But when you have ill will, which is what we have here, we don't have a goodwill towards the pursuit of justice. You can hate Stephen Avery, as I've said many times in the past, but still want justice for him, because the justice system applies to everybody. And if you create an environment where you can manipulate the justice system for one person, they've got the willingness to do it for others. So you want Stephen and Brendan, for that matter, to receive justice because they're entitled to it, and then we all might need it at one stage ourselves. And the issue of Bobby Dassey is to me, whilst it's obviously related, is not at the heart of where we're at the moment. The heart of this matter is Stephen Avery entitled to an evidentiary hearing or a new trial? That's the issue. Whether Bobby Dassey was involved or et cetera, is a matter for a trial or a court or something, right? Bobby's entitled to the proper presumption of innocence and all the things that go with that, just like Stephen was but didn't get, right? So we need to focus away. But Angela Sukovich totally focuses on things where she says, even if Mr. Sawinski saw Bobby Dassey pushing the car down the road, or that doesn't prove that Bobby had anything to do with Teresa's death. Well, we're not. Fine. That's probably on the surface true. But what it does prove is that car was off the property.
Yeah, but you could argue that nobody's seen Stephen bleed in that car. Nobody's seen Stephen put the key where they found it. You could use the same argument against Stephen if she wants to try to do that.
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly. And then of course we have, this is where I think Jerry Buting and obviously others raised the issue about the reference to Brendan's confession, right? Well, Brendan's confession had nothing to do with Stephen's trial.
Nope, they didn't even use it. In Stephen's trial, he did this all by himself.
Yes. And so, it just shows you there are all those signs of ill will here, that they're not interested in justice.
Nope.
And so despite the 31 pages of most of which was just regurgitating what other people had said, there was no independent deep dive into does the petition deserve a hearing. It was just she was trying to argue as if she was the prosecution, right? Not trying to argue from an independent justice point of view. I read it and I wrote notes I'm not going to go to it now, but I wrote notes all over this. I'm thinking, this is just crazy. It's just crazy stuff. And it's even like she had a discussion about Baresh about, the fact that he saw him and blah, 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 blah. That didn't mean he had anything to do with the crime, right?
But the car never left the property. Yeah.
So I looked at the whole thing and said, she wrote, in my view, physically or mentally, she rewrote the conclusion to start with, that is to deny the petition, and then went back and put in all the information that supported that conclusion, in her mind at least. It wasn't a proper, and she took a year to do it, right?
Yeah.
That's not justice, that's just abuse. But anyway, the positive thing about it is Stephen's really happy that it's now gone past her. And I spoke to him yesterday, and I actually did a little, very brief 8 or 9 minute recording with him, which I'll publish later today probably. But he's very happy. He's now past Angela Sukovich. He knew he was never going to get any proper dealings from her, and it's moving on to the Court of Appeals. So.
Yeah. It's just a shame that through his whole, from 1985 to now, he's been dealing with the same people.
Yeah.
I mean,
This matter should be taken out of the jurisdiction of
I agree.
of the local county, or in this case, it's served by the Sheboygan County. Yeah, but it should be taken out of that and and handed down to Milwaukee or Madison or wherever, and dealt with independently. With no one's got any skin in the game other than the wanting to have justice for Stephen Avery, Brendan Dassey, for anybody for that matter. Because this matter is not going to go away just because Angela Sukovich writes this thing. In fact, interestingly, Millbilly, I mean, I might be overreading this. The very first thing she says in the first line of her response, she says, the defendant is back before the circuit court, right? That to me clearly implies she's annoyed that she's dealing with it again, right?
Yeah.
Why would you say is back? Like it's like you could put that in different words by saying,
like here we go again.
Exactly. Here we go again, right? That just shows you where her head is, right?
Like,
her head is not in the pursuit of justice, right?
And then the court will not recount the full record in this voluminous case. I'm just going to cherry pick what I want to discuss.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and she doesn't understand the facts of the case, right? That's one thing, and it is a big case, but she doesn't understand the facts, and she unravels any credibility by evidencing that lack of knowledge through the silly things that she says. Obviously, we feel really sorry for Stephen and all his connected family, children and others. But seriously, if Angela Sukovich does this sort of stuff to Stephen Avery, who else does she do it to in the way that she conducts herself in court?
Like I said, It's not the justice system, it's the just us system.
Yeah. Yeah. And anyway, you kind of got to draw a line on it, move past it and go, okay, let's just look for the future. Stephen's positive, he's healthy. He's relatively happy given his circumstances, and we've got to ride that wave with him. It's frustrating, but no more frustrating than it is for Stephen himself.
What are your thoughts about when she says, even if Bobby Dassey was seen with the vehicle, he could have been helping Stephen and Brendan?
Oh, man, seriously, come on! Like, where in any evidence, any recorded interviews, any testimony does Bobby say he had anything to do with the car beyond, in his mind, seeing it sitting there when he left to go hunting? Right? None. Zero. You know? So it's like she just creates it. She's creating facts or alleged facts by making statements like that. There's nothing. She's supposed to deal with a petition. Is there sufficient newly discovered evidence to warrant an examination to check whether this information is valid? In other words, if this information is valid, would it have had the influence on a jury to cause the original finding to be unreliable? And if the answer to that was yes, they should order a new trial in the interest of justice. No, she doesn't do that. She goes in and argues like Bobby's on trial. She's the defendant for Bobby Dassey, and I'm not saying he's the guilty man or anything, but she goes way, way away from her role as an independent justice. And clearly the Sawinski evidence and all that is, and the Baresh evidence and all that is, and all the tangential matters that touch that are all sufficiently meritorious that a jury would think, this places a different slant on things. Let's in the interest of justice, firstly, let's examine Mr. Sawinski to see whether what he's saying is truthful. And secondly, if it is, and let's call a new trial and let this matter get settled. So
I don't know. We got two individuals studying. They see Bobby and another individual with the victim's car.
Yeah.
It's not just one person saying. Now we have two people saying it, and it happens on the same day, possibly.
Yes, correct.
So, reading this whole 31 pages of garbage, pathetic. Like how she just, I don't know.
It's awful. It's selective justice for those they want to deliver it to. That's basically what it is. And because there are so many, players in this game, I'm not talking about just the persons who are responsible for Teresa's death. I'm talking about all the players in law enforcement and other areas that have tried to pin this on Stephen Avery. Because of that, that's why this issue is resisted, because they're all fearful that they're going to be exposed, and the cards will tumble. Because what eventually will happen is that someone in a tangential sense who may have had some dealings with it, but is not kind of primarily liable or whatever, they'll end up spilling the beans, and it'll all tumble from there. Yeah. And if you're the perpetrator of the crime, whoever that may be, or more than one, you're going to start talking because you're not going to take the fall on this on your own, right? So that's what they fear. So we will see. We certainly have the right person in Kathleen Zellner representing Stephen, that's for sure. She's a bulldog when it comes to this stuff. So she won't be giving up. And Stephen is the right client too, because he'll never give up. Stephen Avery would rather die in prison than to do anything other than to protect his innocence. So
I still read this and I can't even believe what I'm reading. Some of the things she suggests. I don't know.
Well, so she just tries to reword the. She could put my name in there and say, well, Mark Odenot wasn't. Where's the connection between him and the scene, right? It's garbage. It's like a little kind of fairy tale way that she interprets the matters. She totally ignored. At no time, in not one word in this petition response, does she reference the issue that there is a conflict between the cars being seen off the property before November 5 and the fact that the state's argument was the car was always there. None. She doesn't even acknowledge that fact.
Yep.
She states that she regurgitates and states what Sawinski and others have said, but she doesn't link that to the incongruent fact that that car was allegedly always on the property. That of itself should be meritorious for an evidentiary hearing because it changes the total narrative of what went on here. So, yeah.
Well, we should hear back from. I think everything for Zellner should be submitted by October, I'm hoping.
Yeah. I don't know, but I would have no doubt that she's already drafted this appeal response in essence long before now. Knowing full well what there is. And now she's just going
tweak it a little bit.
We've Justice Sukovic's utterings inside it now.
Well, she already pretty much checkmated Lisa Comfer when she first brought the Paperboys information. They thought she was just stating this and thought she had nothing to back up what she was saying. And then she
that's right.
The whole kitchen sink on him, like, here you go. And I'm sure she's going to do the same thing with the tow truck driver because she didn't put everything in there. And I'm guarantee she completely vetted what she's doing before she even brings it and submits it because she's not going to look at it.
There's no question about that. And the other thing is, it's quite likely that she has, because she never stopped investigating. So there's quite likely she's accumulated even further evidence since then as well. So,
I'm sure.
Yeah. So that's why Stephen's got the right lawyer. So, and Kathleen, despite Stephen's little straying from the line occasionally, he's the right client for for this matter because he's strong and he believes in his justice. He believes in his innocence, and and he's got the right attitude. So yeah, I'm very hopeful. I've always been hopeful, but I'm very hopeful about this matter. It's just disappointing that you have to go through these obstacles, and she takes a year in this one. She takes a year out of Stephen's life that he can never get returned to him. So, and his children, and his grandchildren, and his dad.
Yeah.
You know, Stephen is a person just like us all that has, you know, lots of people who love him, right? And who he loves. And taking that away from him is just the worst thing you could ever do to another human being.
I don't think people realize, like, he just had 2 brand new babies born right before he went taken to prison and taken to jail. Not to mention he already had 3 other kids.
Yep.
So,
and has grandchildren now who he's never known at all, really. And you know, God, when you break it down to the human side and take it away from the legal side, it's just like, oh my God, seriously, this is too much to bear. But he's strong and he's determined, and that's what you want in this situation.
What are your thoughts on this convicting that's going to be coming out?
Oh God, seriously. What this is going to be, you mentioned earlier, Millbilly, about the media. This is just a media piece, one to create money for the producers or the whoever's, Sean Reck or whoever else is behind it. It's just we already know that they will have large parts of the facts wrong, right? So, I mean, well, you know, they can go and do what they're going to do. It'll be a flash in the pan that'll pique the interest of a few people, and then a week later it'll be gone, right?
Their very first trailer, Candace Owens narrating, saying that Stephen was exonerated for the murder of Penny Bernstein. Like, come on now, get your facts straight.
That's what I'm saying. They don't care about the facts. They care about the drama and the, you know.
Well, based on the trailer I've seen, it seems like their whole argument is against what Making a Murderer put out. They're not about the truth. They're just trying to bolster why Making a Murderer is wrong. But I don't know. I'm gonna try to find a way to watch this without having to pay for it.
Well,
but if I have to, I will.
I'll definitely watch it some way or another because it's important to understand these things, right? But I know exactly what I'm going to see. I'm just going to see a factually inaccurate dissertation of a media perspective on something, right? It won't go at all to the heart of the factual matters and the detail that all of us supporters go to when we analyze this case.
They're not going to look at any corruption whatsoever because it's definitely there. Multiple.
You know, if you and I and thousands of others genuinely thought based on the evidence Stephen was guilty, we wouldn't be doing this, right?
Correct. That's the first thing I did when I got involved with this case.
Right.
Seeing if Stephen could have actually done this, and everything pointed not towards him.
Correct. And you know, and then you have the really tragic collateral damage of Brendan, right?
Well, we all know why that happened. He was set to get bail, and they talked to everybody and their mother, trying to get them to say anything they can to bring any more charges against Stephen so they can raise his bail so he stays locked up.
Yeah.
They went after Marie, didn't work. Went after Jody, she gets released. Now they're panicking. His bail's about to be approved, and they pull Brendan in.
Yep. So it's quite the story. You know, when you get someone who doesn't really, I mean, which happens more to me than to you.
Like the people I've been talking to, like some of them are ex-law enforcement. And I was like, tell me why you think he's guilty. And everything they tried pointing out, I was like, this is why this is wrong. This is why that is wrong. I was with this guy for about 9 hours, and by the end of the day, he now thinks Stephen was framed.
I remember a number of years ago, maybe 4 years ago, I'm thinking how long it was. I was over in Connecticut with some friends who have a connection to that area of the world due to being a student over there back in a long time ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was out to dinner with about 8 people. Only 2 of them were my friends.
Mm-hmm.
The others were friends of them. And someone said, "Oh, what are you doing after you leave here, Mark?" I said, "I'm going over to Wisconsin." I'm going, "Oh, why are you going there?" And I'm going to do such and such to do with Stephen Avery. And they were aware in sort of tangentially what the whole making a murderer thing was. And then they said, "Oh, well, what's going on with the case?" And I said, "Do you really want to talk about that now? Because like I can't tell you, I can't tell you in 5 minutes." And they go,
not.
"Yeah." And seriously, without a word of a lie, for the next 45 minutes while the meals were being ordered and coming and half eaten, they just sat listening to me, right? Mm-hmm. And you could tell just by their reaction that they had there were 2 things. They had no idea what was really going on in this case. And secondly, how shocked they were that their American justice system could be such that this could be allowed to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now they live in Connecticut. It's a wealthy area. It's fairly liberal and so on. But still, it's and when back here in Australia, if I people who kind of again tangentially know something about it, you've got to say, well, you need at least half an hour or an hour to get any sensible response from me. Sorry, and it's quite the story. It's way beyond Stephen and Brendan as human beings. It's way beyond that. There's so much in this story that people don't realize. And part of the reason why people like you and me and thousands of others are so passionate about this is because we don't want this happening to anyone else. And the way that you help prevent that is to get to the truth. And because if you don't do that, this will just, and we know it goes on in other areas, but so we just focus on Stephen and Brendan, and I'm sure we're going to get them out, but we'll just have to keep the strength. And the convicting a murderer thing, to go back to your opening question about that, is that, well, that'll be a little moment in the sun for them, and it'll disappear and no one will talk about it because it won't be substantiated by any factual matters. And the media aren't going to be that interested. The other media aren't going to be that interested in it anyway. So, yeah.
Well, they're sure advertising for it. Sometimes when I watch YouTube videos, some of the ads prior to that are the Daily Wire's convicting the murderer.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting. I'm sure all the supporters out there, and the deep dive ones, will be making a shopping list of all the factual errors in the presentation.
Yeah.
And undoubtedly there'll be a few interesting faces that pop up that have gone to the dark side and supported that view.
Oh, I know. Oh,
so,
I know.
And you think, well, really, what factual matters have changed that would give you that opinion? Because this is not about whether you like Stephen and Brendan or not. It's about the facts and the justice of this. So I can tell you what's happened. Some of those people have just got seduced by in their mind at least, the fame of being involved at that level. That's all it is. That's all it is. It's illusionary. It'll go away.
Yeah. Well, my opinion, it seems like they're just trying to argue what making a murderer got wrong.
Yeah, what did they get wrong, by the way? Can you help me out there? What did they get wrong?
They, as far as Colburn trying to sue them, they play a portion of audio when he's talking when Kratz is interviewing Colburn, and then they play a part of when Buting or Strang are interviewing Colburn, and they put them together to make it's but their intention wasn't he lost his case, so
yeah. Well, you can't put what was it, 4 or 5 weeks of trial and And bear in mind that Making a Murderer, the trial aspects of Stephen's trial at least was, I think, only about 2 episodes. And you can't create thousands of hours of TV. No one will watch it, right? You have to condense things. So will some issues get a little bit, not perfect? Sure, but does it go to the heart of whether the story was being told incorrectly? Well, no one's demonstrated to me that that's the case. I can't see it. I've got no skin in the game here other than truth. So if you can show me where something that was done there was done incorrectly or done in a way that prejudiced the state's view of things, show me. Happy to see it.
It all has to do with the phone call and the plates and stuff.
Yeah. But that goes to the heart of the question of Andrew Colborne was calling in about the plates. Go past the if you like, the presentation aspect of that.
I just hope they actually ask him important questions like, hey, why didn't you file a report about talking to Stephen Avery on the 3rd of November until 8 months after when you were instructed to? Why were you trying to disclose that?
Yeah.
Why were you guys so focused on George Zipperer on the 3rd of November?
Yeah.
And then on the 4th, it now turns to Stephen.
Yeah. Anyway, we shall see. But I think the convicting a murderer thing will just be there for a bit, and then it'll be off our minds. So,
well, as far as the audio on the 4th, that's the same day that Ramlow claims to have talked to a Manitowoc officer. Is that why we don't have the audio? I mean, we got a transcript, a printout of the call logs from the sheriff's department I have, and I want to know why they're calling Paul Rabas towing just after 1 p.m. on the 4th. Did they find a car?
Yeah. Well, we know with certainty the car was sitting down there at the turnaround at the dam during that week, and then finally got moved at the end of the week.
Even Robert Fabian said he's seen a car there. But then when they talk to him, it goes from looking like the RAV4 to a green Jeep.
Yeah, well.
They manipulated everybody. Like, just based on, you listen to Chuck's interview, and they're telling him, you want to give a statement? You want to give a statement? He tells them, I already gave you my statement. Well, this is your time to change it. And you look at when they talk to Earl, pressuring him, threatening him.
Yeah,
and then you look what they did to Brendan.
Yeah, I know.
They were willing to do anything they can to get what they wanted, and that was Stephen put behind bars, stop his lawsuit, make him go away.
Yeah. And of course, Stephen didn't have Jerry and Dean until the new year, right?
So, well, Dean knew about his case from the get-go, because very first phone call when Stephen calls Glenn's office, he talks to Dean Strang.
Yes.
Glenn tells Strang to take his case. Then Strang calls Buting in.
Yeah. But, we've got a whole period of 2, 3 months, 4 months nearly, before anything is substantially representing Stephen in his best interest, right?
When Stephen went to go get Strang as his attorney, Kratz tried to stop that, but the judge had already signed off on it.
Yeah. God. What a story, Millbilly. Seriously.
It's like they're banking on him having a public defender. I mean, look what Lincoln Chinsky did for Brendan. Absolutely nothing. He helped the state.
Yeah, he did more than nothing. He actually represented the state.
And I'm sure that's exactly what they're banking on when they had the public defender before Dean Strang became his attorney.
One of the things that really, just on Brendan's side, just momentarily, is that I'll never, ever, ever in my whole life ever forget is that statement that Michael O'Kelly put before Brendan saying, "Are you sorry or not sorry for what you did to Teresa?" I mean, seriously, that is unbelievably corrupt behavior to put a loaded statement where either answer is going to be effectively a confession that he did something to her, right? It's like saying, have you stopped have you stopped beating your wife, right? That sort of question, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you say yes, that means you did beat her in the past. If you say no, that means you're still beating her now, right? So this, are you sorry? Not sorry is I'm not sorry, which means that you did do something, Teresa, or I am sorry because I did something to Teresa. And here is Michael O'Kelly, Brendan's, Kaczynski's puppet investigator, putting that statement before his own client to get a confession out of him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, seriously, it's just unbelievable.
But
That's
just the
okay.
time frame, like O'Kelly talks to Brendan, and then Wiegert, and then come and interview Brendan again, get him to call his mom, trying to get him, like, they know Brendan was easily manipulated and could easily be swayed to say what they wanted to say.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Brendan had no idea what he was doing to himself.
No, who would in his circumstances? He was an intellectually challenged young man trying to be compliant as a good boy. He's 16 years of age. He had no legal representative with him. If he had a legal representative with him, a proper one, they would have said to Brendan, don't answer that question. Don't answer that question. There would be no confession.
Correct.
Right? There'd be no confession. There'd be no, sort of corroborating narrative to Stephen, because Brendan's so-called confession implicates Stephen. And this matter would have not been there. So you could pin the whole horrible story behind the fact that Brendan was not delivered his proper entitlement to due representation, and that's where the Achilles heel was, right in that moment. Let alone all the other stupid behaviour that went on with Stephen and Brendan. But if Brendan had been properly represented at the time and had not spoken to police other than to identify who he was, none of this would have happened. Correct. And how that, I mean, the federal court judges, at least 3 of them, and or 4, I guess, all said this was the most egregious case they'd ever seen. But that's not good enough, right? Apparently,
no, he's still in jail. I mean, it's more than a nightmare. It's crazy.
Yeah.
No matter which part of this case you look at, Brendan's side, Stephen's side, prior to Teresa's case, it's all just unbelievable.
Crazy stuff. But what's the solution? The solution is to stay strong, to keep looking, to be supportive of Brendan and Stephen and those people that matter to them, and keep doing what we keep on doing. I mean, we're in the lucky position that we've got the freedom to make choices. So, and our support for Brendan and Stephen is kind of emblematic of our view about wanting justice for everyone. So let's keep at it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking your time to talk to me.
My pleasure. As I said, I spoke to Stephen yesterday. He's very well and happy. I have a little brief interview which I'll publish later today. I'm hoping to see him back in Wisconsin very soon, and we continue on with the fight. And I'm looking forward to seeing Kathleen Zellner's submission to the Court of Appeals.
As am I.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you, my friends. A sunny Sunday here in Australia already. Getting towards the end of winter. That's quite pleasant outside. So
it's super hot here, man. It was 110 2 days ago.
Holy God! Wow.
I was stuck in the sun working down at the Port of Milwaukee with no wind at all. I thought I was going to die.
Wow, that doesn't sound like much fun.
No, it was horrible.
Yeah.
But I survived.
Good. All right, mate. Thanks. Great to talk to you, and no doubt we'll chat again soon.
For sure.
All right. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.